Have you ever heard of a single question so powerful that it could transform the life of a ruler, change the fate of a kingdom, and leave behind a lesson for centuries to come? Today, I'll share with you the story of a mighty king whose destiny was reshaped not by war, not by wealth, but by a question that altered everything he thought he knew. Long ago, in the heart of a prosperous kingdom surrounded by golden fields and towering mountains, there lived a king named Ariston. He was known across the land for his unmatched power, his brilliance in strategy, and his ability to expand the borders of his realm. Under his rule, trade flourished, the people were well fed, and his palace gleamed with treasures from distant lands. And yet, behind the walls of his grand palace, King Ariston felt an emptiness that no feast, no jewel, and no victory could fill. He often stood by his window, gazing at the horizon, wondering why, despite all he had, he felt a quiet unrest gnawing at his soul. The people adored him, but whispers spread that their king was growing distant, lost in thought, chasing answers to questions that had no name. One evening, when the sky was painted with streaks of crimson and gold, an old traveler arrived at the palace gates. Unlike other guests who came bearing gifts of gold or silks, this traveler carried nothing but a small satchel and a calm presence. His eyes, though tired, shone with a depth that made even the guards pause. The king, intrigued by the stranger's boldness, allowed him into the court. "Welcome, traveler," King Ariston said. "What brings you to my hall without offerings or tribute?" The old man bowed gently. "Great king, I bring you neither gold nor jewels, for I have none. What I carry instead is a question that has the power to change your life if you dare to hear it." The court erupted with laughter. Ministers and noblemen sneered, whispering that the traveler must be a fool. But King Ariston, curious and weary of hollow praises, raised his hand for silence. "A question," the king repeated. "And what makes you think I, a ruler of nations, need a question?" The traveler met his gaze. "Because, Majesty, you have everything except the answer you seek." The hall grew quiet. King Ariston's voice softened. "And what is this question of yours?" The traveler stepped forward and spoke, his words clear and steady. "What remains when everything you hold dear is taken away?" The question hung in the air like a blade. The courtiers shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to respond. But the king's face grew pale, for the words had pierced straight into the heart of his unspoken unrest. That night, long after the traveler had gone, King Ariston could not sleep. The question echoed through his mind. What remains when everything you hold dear is taken away? He thought of his crown, his palace, his armies, his wealth. If all were stripped away, what would remain? Would he still be a king? Would he still be Ariston? For the first time, he realized he did not know. The next morning, the king summoned his advisors, philosophers, and priests, demanding answers. Each gave him a different reply. One priest said, "What remains is faith, for faith is eternal." A philosopher replied, "What remains is the soul, for the body and riches are but illusions." A warrior declared, "What remains is honor, for that is the true crown of a man." Though their answers were wise, none settled the storm within the king's heart. Determined to seek the truth for himself, Ariston disguised as a commoner and left the palace with only a cloak and a walking staff. He wandered through villages, deserts, and forests, asking people of all walks of life the question that haunted him. He asked a farmer, who replied, "What remains is the seed, for even after harvest, life begins again." He asked a mother, who said, "What remains is love, For even when children leave, the love for them endures. He asked a beggar, who smiled and whispered, "What remains is hope, for hope keeps me alive even when I have nothing else." Each answer was a fragment of truth, yet the puzzle remained incomplete. One night, exhausted from travel, Ariston rested beneath an ancient oak tree. There he met a hermit who lived in solitude, his life simple and his heart at peace. The king posed the same question to him: "What remains when everything you hold dear is taken away?" The hermit looked at him kindly. "Everything you cling to, power, wealth, even love, can be taken away in this life. But what remains is who you truly are when all else is stripped away. It is your character, your essence, the self that no crown, no jewel, no title can define. That is what remains." The words struck Ariston like thunder. He realized then that he had built his life around things that could vanish in an instant: riches, victories, adoration. But he had not asked himself the deeper question: who am I without them? King Ariston returned to his palace a changed man. Though he still wore the crown, his heart no longer clung to it. He ruled not with pride in his possessions, but with clarity of purpose. He began walking among his people, not as a distant monarch, but as a man seeking to understand their struggles and joys. He built schools and libraries, for he knew knowledge could outlive wealth. He listened to the voices of the poor, for he realized dignity is worth more than gold. He made peace with neighboring kingdoms, for he understood that legacy is not in conquered lands, but in the lives one touches. The people noticed the change. Their king no longer seemed restless, but radiant with calm strength. They called him Ariston the Wise. Years later, when his reign came to an end, his kingdom remembered not the size of his armies, nor the glitter of his treasures, but the question that had changed him, and the way he lived his answer. And so, the king discovered the truth. When all is taken away, what remains is the self you've cultivated, the character you've built, and the legacy of how you touched others' lives. Now I'll leave you with the same question. What remains when everything you hold dear is taken away? If this story moved you, imagine how many others might find strength in it too. So don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need this message today. Your support helps us bring more stories of wisdom and inspiration straight to you.